Welcome in to the Draft Lab. I'm Joel Worth, and this is the IDP Plus Best Ball Show. We are back. It's been a little bit. Took a couple of weeks off to spend some time with family, but glad to be back. And we're going to be talking about the Battle Royale on Underdog for Week 2 of the NFL main slate. If you're not familiar with Battle Royale, let's talk about it a little bit. It's a $5 entry tournament. It's a 150 max, so 68,000 total entrants. So it's a large field tournament, definitely. $300,000 of prizes, $30,000 to the winner. Pretty sweet and not bad for a weekly tournament. $30K payoff, so you gotta like that. It's about 40% filled, so no worries about the tournament filling anytime soon. It is a guaranteed prize pool, but it'll probably fill. It's regular Best Ball Mania scoring, no different than regular Best Ball Mania, half PPR, 6-point touchdowns. Now, the format is it's a 6-person draft, and it's a 6-player roster. Now, your roster is going to include 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and then a flex. That can either be your second running back, it can be your third wide receiver, or second tight end. Not going to happen very often. Some people might do it as a correlation play with a quarterback or something like that, but most often it's going to be either a second running back or a third wide receiver. The way I like to think of the Battle Royale is it's basically a DFS show or tournament, except you're drafting instead of using a salary cap, and it's just a much shallower player pool. Again, you're only drafting 36 players in each draft pod. So just a very shallow pool of players. So let's talk about some tips if you're not familiar with the format, if you haven't done it before. One thing, I think probably the most important thing is you want to understand who is and who isn't on the slate, on the main slate, and then use that to kind of inform your decisions about how you're going to build your roster, because roster construction is really important. You need to know, do you want to go deep at running back? Do you want to draft that second running back? Do you want to go deep at receiver? Do you want to draft that third receiver for your flex? So it's important to understand like who's not on the slate, what positions are shallower because of who's not on the main slate, who's playing on Thursday, who's playing on Sunday night, who's playing on Monday night. That's very important. One tip as you're going through the draft is to know and to kind of look at the teams around you and know what they can and cannot take, right? Because your rosters are very limited. You can only take 1 quarterback. So let's take, for example, you're drafting in the 5th position, and you say you're in round 5, 6 turn. You need a quarterback and a flex. If you look and see that the team in the 6th position already has their quarterback, you know that they cannot take a quarterback around the turn, so you can take your flex and then know that whatever quarterback you want to take is just going to be sitting there waiting for you around the turn because they can't take it. So very important to be looking at, same thing goes with tight end, right? Because most teams are not going to take a second tight end. If you know that they have a tight end, then you can probably wait and get your tight end around the corner. So very important to be looking at the teams around you and knowing what they can and cannot take, because that can let you kind of finesse your rosters the way you want them to. Maybe you can get multiple players that you want because the other team can't take them. The other really important thing here is this is a large field tournament, so you need to have a differentiator. You need to have something that makes your roster different. You just think about it, six teams, 6 players on each team. That's only 36. You're only going 36 players deep in each pod. And it's a large field tournament. Like we said, 68,000 entries. If you're going to win, you need to have something, one or 2 players that's going to be kind of different than the rest of the field. You need to have a build that's different than the rest of the field. So you can there's 2 ways to do that, right? You can either have a draft pod where kind of everything breaks your way and you get players that you like at kind of beyond after their ADPs, and you can get kind of value that way. That works. Or basically you have to take a player at the end of the draft that may not be getting drafted in every draft. We'll go through some of those so you can understand what I'm talking about there. So what's happening this week? Week 2, the main slate. Let's go through the first round. Right now, there's a pretty clear top 4 that happens kind of in some order in pretty much every draft. Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Breece Hall, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are going to go 1 through 4 in some order in basically almost every draft you see in the Battle Royale. Let's talk about these guys. Cooper Kupp, obviously target monster, 21 targets in week 1 after the Puka Nacua injury. Again, going against Arizona, not a very good defense. It's a well-coached defense, but just doesn't have a lot of playmakers. So expect him to get just peppered with targets. And again, we want volume. We want a high target floor because that, you can't be taking zeros in a format like this with only 6 players on your team. So you need a very high floor of player. My preference for the first pick would be CeeDee Lamb. Playing New Orleans this week at home. New Orleans has been kind of historically bad against slot receivers. They were really bad against them last year. Tough to tell in week 1 because they kind of destroyed Carolina. But again, CeeDee Lamb, probably the best, not necessarily pure slot, but a guy who spends most of his time in the slot. So I think he's going to have a monster week. He is my preferred number 1 overall pick for the week 2 slate. Breece Hall is the guy I'm fading out of the top 4. I think most people are looking at the slate and saying, okay, Christian McCaffrey's questionable, probably isn't going to play. Bijan Robinson's not on the slate. Saquon Barkley's not on the slate. Devon Achan's not on the slate. Breece Hall is pretty clearly the best running back on the slate. But I think there's some issues, right? The Jets are playing back-to-back road games. They're playing on a short week after playing on Monday night. They go to Tennessee. Tennessee's got a really good run defense. You got Jeffrey Simmons. He's a beast in the middle. So I just don't think this is a good – I don't think – obviously he's not a bad play, but I don't think he belongs in that top tier. So he's the guy I'm going to end up fading this week. The other clear top 4 guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You just got to love this matchup against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay without Antoine Winfield, their best defensive player. Their entire secondary is kind of beat up. And so you got to think that Detroit's going to want to get St. Brown involved. Had a pretty quiet week 1. Just got to expect that they're going to want to get him involved heavily. So I like him quite a bit. Rounding out the top of the first round of the draft, Justin Jefferson has the 5th highest ADP. Justin Jefferson, right? Had a good week 1. And then Mike Evans. Mike Evans plays again against Detroit, so it should be a very high-scoring game. I think it's the highest total, over-under total on the slate. And Detroit plays a lot of man coverage, and Mike Evans just destroys man coverage. So my favorite play is if you can get kind of Amon-Ra St. Brown and then get Mike Evans around the corner, around the turn. You can start off with those 2 in a stack, in a correlated stack. I love that start. Can't always do it, obviously, with them both with first-round ADPs. But that's kind of my favorite way to start a draft if you can pull it off. Sometimes you can do it. I've pulled off a few drafts where I've made that happen, so I like that start quite a bit. So let's go through the positions and some other guys that I like for this slate. Quarterbacks, I am fading the quarterbacks this week for the main slate. Think about who's not on the slate. Josh Allen, Tua, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Kirk Cousins. Caleb Williams didn't have a very good week 1. He's not going to be anywhere near this list, but so that really only leaves Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Jordan Love's not going to play this week. So your top tier quarterbacks are just those 2. And I don't necessarily love either one of them this week. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to need to run as much with being a heavy favorite, heavy home favorite against the Raiders. And we'll talk about Isaiah Pacheco. I think the Chiefs are going to try and run a lot this week. So I don't necessarily love Mahomes or Jackson. So I'm kind of fading quarterback this week. And I'm trying to correlate. So if I get CeeDee Lamb, I want to go after Dak Prescott. If I get Amon-Ra St. Brown, I want to get Jared Goff. If I can't, if someone, like a Laporta manager takes, say I get St. Brown and the Laporta manager takes Goff and I can't, then maybe if I get Mike Evans, then I want to go after Baker Mayfield and use that as my differentiator. So I'm fading quarterback this week. Not that Mahomes or Jackson are bad plays. I just I would rather kind of wait for my quarterback this week. So let's go to the running backs. I think my favorite running back this week is Kyron Williams. He got absolute bell cow usage week 1. Blake Corum was a healthy scratch. Again, Rams are playing at Arizona. Just not a good defense. A terrible run defense last year, and James Cook had a really good week against them week 1. So it doesn't look like they fixed their problems. Again, well coached, but just don't have the playmakers. So Kyron Williams is my favorite running back this week. Isaiah Pacheco's, I think, probably my second favorite. I think the Chiefs are going to want to run this week. Cincinnati's, again, pretty bad run defense. I think that's kind of their Achilles heel. Got run over by Ramondre Stevenson in week 1. So I think this is a week that Andy Reid's going to want to kind of eat clock with the run game. So I like Pacheco a lot. The other running backs I like are both the running backs in the Green Bay Indianapolis game. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs is probably the best value play you can get because you can get him in round 4. Malik Willis starting for Jordan Love this week. They're going to want to take as much off his plate as possible. I think I would not be surprised if Josh Jacobs gets 30 touches this week. So again, you want that volume floor, and that's going to be a very high floor. And Jacobs looked really good in the second half after in week 1. Struggled in the first half. The offensive line just wasn't blocking well for him at all. Just didn't have any chances. But coming out after halftime, once they kind of got their stuff together, he was ripping off some huge chunk gains. I think they can do that again. Indy's defense really beat up. They lost Juju Brents, the cornerback. He's out for the year. Julian Blackman, the safety, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, all have not practiced so far this week. So I think that's a defense that's pretty vulnerable. And then on the other side, you got Jonathan Taylor, obviously a great option, one of the best running backs on the slate. And Green Bay's run defense just did not look good week 1. Saquon Barkley kind of took them to town. So don't necessarily know that the Packers have made the fixes that we wanted to see in the run defense game. But so I think Taylor's a really good option as well. Moving over to the receivers, I like both the 49ers receivers, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk. Listen, the Vikings played well against the Giants in week 1 defensively, but that was more of an offensive disaster by Daniel Jones than it was anything good to say about the Vikings defense. Not to take anything away. You got to play who you play. You play who's on your schedule, but I do still think that Vikings secondary is very exploitable. So I like both the Niners receivers, and I like Kittle as well. I like every part of that passing. I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to run like they did against the Jets on Monday night. So I think they're going to lean more heavily on the pass. For the same reason I didn't like Breece Hall, I do like Garrett Wilson because I think the Jets are just going to have to throw more than people think. Tennessee's run defense is very good. Their pass defense isn't great, even though Caleb Williams did not do well week 1. I think that was more of a Caleb Williams issue than the Titans pass defense making any big strides. So I do like Garrett Wilson this week. The other guy I like is Malik Neighbors. We talked about how bad Daniel Jones was. Giants get the Commanders this week, and like the Arizona run defense, Commanders pass defense was terrible last year and was terrible in week 1. So again, the Buccaneers just lit them up. Mike Evans had 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin had a touchdown. So I think this is a really good bounce back spot for the Giants. Neighbors got 7 targets. Wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible. Disappointing a little bit just because, in relation to Wan'Dale Robinson getting 12 targets, you'd like to see him be more heavily targeted. But I think this is a much better matchup. And Daniel Jones is just going to get better and better and better coming back off the knee injury. So I expect a much better week for him. And Neighbors is someone you can get in the last round. I think he's a good differentiator candidate. Tight end, man, tight end was a mess in week 1. So I don't blame you if you don't want to kind of spend up for a Kelsey or an Andrews. I do like Kelsey this week a little bit. But I think my favorite tight end play is Trey McBride, just because you can kind of stack him with Kyler Murray. And again, I don't want to invest heavily in quarterback. So if I can get like a Kyler Murray, Trey McBride stack in the 4th, 5th, which you can usually do, I like doing that. So McBride is kind of my favorite tight end of the slate, just because of his ability to kind of stack up, especially if you've got a Cooper Kupp already or a Kyron Williams and you want to really stack that game, because I think that's going to be a really high scoring game. I like that option as well. And I do like Isaiah Likely. I think he's really good. And just, I don't know how much they're going to have to throw, being 9-point favorites at home. So like him as an option, but I prefer McBride, because I think that game is going to be much higher scoring game. So let's talk about some differentiator options. Again, this is a large field tournament. You need to have some guys who are kind of fringe getting drafted to kind of separate yourself if you want to get to the top of the tiers, top of the payouts. You don't want to take a lesser player just to be different, but you do want to have some differentiation with guys who have the upside to jump into that kind of tier of draftable players. So some options that I like this week: Devontae Adams, just because he's Devontae Adams. We talked about the game script there. Raiders playing in Baltimore. I think they're going to have to throw a lot. This is not going to be a game where they're going to be able to sit back and run the ball. They're going to have to throw. So I think he's going to get peppered with targets. Like him quite a bit. His ADP is 34.9, so not necessarily being drafted in every draft. Chris Olave, well, it's a disappointing week 1, no question. But they just didn't need him, right? They put up 40 points against Carolina without him. Just didn't need him. So, and that's okay. But they're going to need him against Dallas this week. Another game that I think is going to be a shootout. ADP of 34.9, just like Adams. So not necessarily being drafted in every draft. So kind of a 6th-round guy that you can put in your lineup and get yourself a little bit different. I don't hate Derek Carr this week either. If you want to be really different, get Olave in the 5th, Carr in the 6th, something like that. If you want to get really different, I like that option, because again, I think that's a game that's kind of a sneaky shootout game. I think that game could result in some big points. The Jacksonville guys I like this week: Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. They play Cleveland. Cleveland plays, again, a very heavy man defensive coverage scheme. And Kirk and Ingram are both guys who do better against man coverage. So I think they're going to have better weeks than they did week 1. Dropping down Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit, but he's not really someone who you're going to draft in this format. But I think the matchup for Christian Kirk and Ingram is better than it was in week 1. And so I like those guys as potential late options to kind of differentiate yourself. Same game, like Amari Cooper. Jacksonville on the other side lost Tyson Campbell, their cornerback, for this season, or no, in short-term IR, sorry. But Amari Cooper got a lot of targets, just didn't really connect. So again, as Deshaun Watson kind of gets up to speed, I think that connection will work out better. So he's a guy I like taking in the 6th round to differentiate, because he's not being ADP of 35.6, so he's not being drafted very often. And then maybe my favorite differentiator is Jaden Reed. Again, we talked about Malik Willis starting for the Packers. He's very raw. They're going to want to make things as easy as possible for him. So a lot of short manufactured touches, short routes, option routes, real easy stuff, kind of layup throws for him. And the Colts played the highest rate of zone coverage in the league. At least they were last year. They played 90% zone in week 1. Jaden Reed was PFF's highest rated wide receiver against zone in week 1. He's a very good receiver against zone. Obviously, Indianapolis is a very good slot corner in Kenny Moore, but Again, they play a lot of zone, and the Packers will move Jaden Reed around the formation a lot. So at a monster week 1, I think he's going to have another really good week. Again, another good week in week 2. And an ADP of 35.7, he's someone who's not being taken very often. So he's a good differentiator category. So that being said, let's pull up a draft. Let's run through one real quick, see how long it's going to take to fill. All right, waiting for 2. So while we're waiting, let's talk about IDP Plus. You're watching the channel. Obviously, you know about everything we offer here on the YouTube channel. You get even more on the site. And right now we are offering a 20% off site-wide. You can start your season off right with the IDP Plus subscription. Get 20% off any subscription for a limited time and get access to all our tools, all our data, all the IDP articles. And don't miss out on our subscriber Discord. I'm in the Discord. I'm a boomer, so I'm not really good at it, but just at me. I'll answer your questions. But the tools, man, so cool. The tackle props. If you're into betting, we've got a whole slew of stuff going on. So go to idpplus.com/membership and enter promo code PROPS. It's PROPS and get 20% off any subscription. So let's see. All right, we've got a draft fired up. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So we drew the 6. No surprise. So we'll see how this plays out. Let's see. I've got my rankings loaded up. So I've got CeeDee Lamb number 1. Cooper Kupp goes 1. He's going number 1 most often. I can't blame people for doing that. I've done it once, but I would take Lamb. Most of the time, Breece Hall goes 2. I've seen him go 1. Most of the time, he goes 2 or 3. Again, Lamb goes 3. Let's see how this plays out. So we will be on the turn at 6-7. So Amon-Ra goes. So again, you clear top 4. Sometimes Amon-Ra slips. Sometimes jumps up with a running back into that top 4. But usually that's a pretty clear top 4 tier. And we will see what happens at the 5. So Evans goes there. So I'm going to take Justin Jefferson just because he's Justin freaking Jefferson. And I think I will take, again, my favorite running back on the slate, and that's Kyron Williams. I do like the option of we'll see if we can slide into getting the McBride-Kyler Murray stack as a bring back and basically use Kyron Williams as a bring back on that stack. But we'll see how that plays out. Jonathan Taylor goes. No surprise. He's usually a second-round player. Derrick Henry. I think he's going to get much more usage than he did in week 1. Obviously, they're playing the Raiders instead of the Chiefs, so much less formidable offense that they're going to have to go against. So I think he's going to get a lot more slots. I do like Derrick Henry this week. Just prefer some other options. Just because I don't know that he has the kind of tucked floor that guys like Kyron Williams or Jonathan Taylor have. But still a very good option. Jamar Chase. Pretty quiet week 1. We'll see if they bounce back. They always play well against Kansas City. Again, there goes the first of the 49ers wide receivers, Deebo Samuel. And now we are back to the top. Let's see what they want to do. So I'm going to star 6 picks away, so we're going to have to go through the whole round. I don't think Pacheco is going to fall, but I'll take him if he does. Correlation-wise, we could get Aiyuk as a bring back on Justin Jefferson. We get Kittle as a bring back on Jefferson. I would prefer to get McBride, again, McBride-Kyler stack as a bring back on Kyron. So we've got some good options as bringbacks. Jordan Mason goes. I'm not super high on Mason this week. Talked about it. I think the Vikings are a better run defense than pass defense. It seems kind of questionable to doubtful that McCaffrey's going to play, but we've seen, we got word today that he's practicing in full. He's not in pain and he expects to play. Again, I don't know how much risk I want to take on that, between him and Mason. I'm kind of staying away from both of those guys. If Mason falls, I'll take him, but that doesn't happen very often. And I'm fading McCaffrey 100%. Just don't even want to deal with that. So we do have some nice options. So Laporta, Kelsey, so the elite tight end run going on. We're going to have some good options here. Yeah, Pacheco's still on the board. It'd be very nice if I could get both my my two favorite running backs this week. Josh Jacobs still on the board. He's someone, again, picking at the bottom of the draft. You don't really necessarily. I think I've taken him right at ADP, so I'm probably going to fade and see if he comes around. So I will take Pacheco, get my two top running backs on the slate, and then I'm going to take McBride as a bring back on Kyron, and then see if I can get Kyler around and come back to me at the bottom of the fifth. So I'm going to, and again, Trey McBride, really good tight end, 9 targets week 1. Can't argue with that. So I'm going to go find Kyler. See if we get him to come around. Jacobs comes around, that would be, no, I can't take Jacobs because I'm full. So I am out of running back options. Kyron, Pacheco, I'm full there. Jefferson, McBride. So we got, I do want to start Aiyuk. And again, this is a spot where maybe I would consider a second tight end if just using Kittle as a correlation play. And I wouldn't mind, if I don't get Kyler, Purdy as a differentiator quarterback, not a bad option either. But I would prefer Kyler. All right, so McBride, Connor, again, same game. Gibbs, like a lot. I do not like Montgomery this week. I much prefer Gibbs out of those two. Tampa Bay is tough to run on, right? They got Vita Vea, so you're sitting in the middle of the line, so they're tough to run between the tackles against. I would much prefer having Gibbs, who could get some work in the passing game and kind of get to the edges better than Montgomery was. So Montgomery is someone I'm fading this week. Not really interested in him. They're just not going to. I don't think they're going to need to run with Tampa Bay secondary in such bad shape. So Jacobs does go 4-6. That's about where he goes. Usually get him in the 4th. So that end of the 4th is pretty good value, I think. I didn't really expect him to come all the way back to the bottom of the 5th. Godwin's a nice option too. I like him. We talked about neighbors. So Olave, just don't have a lot of correlation there. Again, Olave is someone I prefer, if I get a CeeDee Lamb, if I get a Lamb Prescott stack, and then I can get Olave as a bring back, I like that more than just kind of having him as a standalone. So Anthony Richardson goes. Yeah, I think I would just rather have Kyler. I think that's a better game environment. So that's kind of why I'm fading quarterback this week. I just think that the stack options make more sense and give you better value. Let you take the higher end guys. So instead of taking a quarterback, I'm taking a Kyron Williams. I'm taking an Isaiah Pacheco. My two favorite running backs for the slate. So I like this build. Got Justin Jefferson, nothing wrong with that. Always a candidate to kind of blow up. Trey McBride, one of my favorite tight ends. Good start for starting in the 6 hole. No complaints here. All right, we are back up, and Kyler came around. Love that. Got that stack, and I'm going to take Aiyuk as a bring back on Justin Jefferson. So Purdy is out, and we'll see what comes around. Likely goes Godwin, Neighbors, Olave. Be happy with any of those. Again, Devontae Adams, someone we talked about as a bring back. So it'd probably be a good spot for Jaden Reed as well. Really like him. So, I'm done. Never mind. Yeah. That was my 6th. That's right. I'm at the bottom, so I'm done. So let's look at the team one more time. Kyler Murray, stacked with Trey McBride, with a Kyron Williams bring back. Isaiah Pacheco, again, my second favorite running back on the slate, just because I think Casey's going to run a lot against Cincinnati. And Justin Jefferson and Brandon Aiyuk correlated in that game in Minnesota. I think that's a game that's going to be pretty high scoring. And again, Justin Jefferson. I think Brandon Aiyuk's going to bounce back. I don't think he was ready to play after holding out for the entire preseason. Not gets a week of practice underneath him. So I like that team. Drafting from the 6th spot, not too shabby at all. So that's it for today. That is Battle Royale for week 2. Get out there, get in the drafts. Hope to see you there. Good luck with your drafts. And we will talk to you next week when we'll talk about Battle Royale for week 3. You can find me at TheJoelWorth on Twitter. Check me out. DMs are always open. If you've got any questions on best ball in general, on Battle Royales, hit me up. Happy to talk to you there. And you can check out myself and Jameson Hutchinson, who will be doing the live DFS show Sunday morning, I think 11 Eastern, right here on the IDP Plus YouTube channel. So much stuff going on. Like, subscribe. Appreciate your time. And we will talk to you next week, where we will talk week 3. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.